So Yossi, this morning I was thinking about how many books of yours I've read, and I counted seven. And I think you've written 10 books in English.
Yes, yes, some of them were translated into English, most of them actually, and to other languages as well.
Other languages as well. And you have a level of access to current and former Mossad agents that I don't think anyone else has. And I don't think that many other investigative journalists in other countries, like David Ignatius or Seymour Hersh, they have that kind of access to CIA agents in the US. What do you think motivates and persuades these agents to talk to you and to trust you with their stories?
Well, thank you for the compliments. I think David Sanger is also a very excellent journalist with good access. Actually, 9 years ago, we did a film together, 0 Days,
Yeah,
about the Stuxnet operation.
Foxnet, that's
And
right.
both of us work with director and producer Alex Gibney
Yeah.
of Jigsaw. I mean, I think it's a combination of trust, uh, long years in the field. I mean, as a journalist, I've never been in the intelligence community except my military 3-year national conscript service. When I say that I've never been in the Israeli intelligence community, people don't believe me. They think that I work for one of the agencies, but I didn't. But I've been observing them and following them and writing about them for nearly, I think, 40 years. When I was already in London as a Haaretz correspondent in London between 80 and 84, and there was an incident there, actually an assassination attempt on the life of the Israeli ambassador there, but 3 Palestinians. Sponsored by the Iraqi intelligence, and that triggered the war and the invasion of Israel into Lebanon in 82. So since then, I've been covering intelligence, terrorism, and I think that altogether, that I'm experienced. I've been around, enable me and to gain trust of people, enable me to talk to them, but still I don't know everything. I mean, I don't live in illusions that I know what's going on in the intelligence community or in the Mossad. But sometimes I have already the experience to understand the patterns of operations, the modes of operations. So if I read something, even if I'm not sure whether it is Mossad or not, I can reach the conclusion because of all these various elements.
Yeah, it comes with the experience. And I have your book, Every Spy a Prince here, and I think it's one of the best books to understand the psyche of Mossad agents and Mossad as an agency. And I remember reading it 30 years ago. It really opened, you know, a window for me to understand Mossad, and I'm sure it was the same thing for many people. So, based on your knowledge of Mossad, based on the work that you've done on Iran, when, what year do you think that, or do you know that Mossad started to recruit agents inside Iran on such a large scale?
That's a phenomena of the last decade. But you have to make a distinction. Until 15, 18 years ago, all Mossad operations, either in Iran or in hostile countries, hostile to Israel, the operations were what Mossad would call blue and white, the colors of the Israeli flag. They were Israelis, Israeli nationals, not necessarily going with Israeli passports, most probably with borrowed identities and undercover and so on. But at a certain moment, they decided, especially with Iran, that it's too dangerous to have Israeli nationals, even if they are equipped with Australian passports or Irish passports, and therefore they started recruiting these agents. But Iranian agents or ex-Iranians or people from the neighboring countries who have access to Iran and know the terrain, but most of them were what the Mossad would call infrastructure agents, which means they are not combatants in the sense that they go and pull the trigger. They can be, store owners. They can be people, real estate agents who rent apartments. They can be people who work for rental car companies. These are infrastructure agents, and their mission is to be there for as long as possible. Some of them are Iranians, and they work for foreign companies. Not always they know that these are Mossad companies. They can be front companies. They don't know that it's Israel or Mossad behind it. And their mission is to be ready for the judgment date. When you need someone, you need a driver, you need a car, you need a safe house. Then you have a second layer of agents. These are people who are combatants, people who have been trained to carry out military operations. And they can be trained, some of them might be trained in Iran, but most probably outside Iran. And in some cases, they even are brought to Israel and trained on such missions. I can give you an example. In 2018, when Israeli Mossad agents, but they were foreigners, non-Israelis, stole the Iranian nuclear archive from a neighborhood in Tehran. They needed to be trained on a model. So the Mossad built for them, I don't know if it was inside Israel or in another country, they built a model which simulated exactly the warehouse where the archive, exactly the same as the archive. Also the safe boxes that were there, and they train how to break into this place and into the safes and how to burn them or to open them or so it's but it started like
That is
10,
the
15
famous
years ago.
Dorghuzabad, how do you call it? Dorghuzabad operation that
Yes,
the agents, they went to Dorghuzabad and they took the evidence from there and they took it to Azerbaijan, as you mentioned in your book.
probably yes. Well, but it's not just that. First of all, they loaded 500, half a ton of documents, discs, photographs, drawings, and so it's a heavy load. And they put it in 2 trucks. Now it's not only that, because they work at the middle of the night. They knew they have like 6-7 hours working inside the place, so I mean, it was such an excellent and precise operation. They knew in advance, during the preparatory sessions, which safes are important and which safes are, just less important. Like, I don't know, about logistic, about accounts, about bookkeeping, and so on. So that's an example of an operation which was already carried out by the Mossad, planned by the Mossad, initiated by the Mossad. Mossad oversaw the operation, but the agent in the field were non-Israelis.
And most probably those infrastructure agents, they had a role in terms of determining where the evidence were and where the safes were, etc., etc. Okay.
Yes, and some of them might be on the look for the neighborhood, on observatory positions. So these are mostly the infrastructure agents. The combatants, those who really pull the trigger or fire the missiles during the last war, these are especially trained on almost similar to the training of Israeli Mossad agents. I mean, sure, the Mossad would not fully trust them to share with them all the information and all their secrets or all the modern technology, state-of-art technology, but they are treated almost as equal as Israeli Mossad agents.
And in your article, you mentioned that Meir Dagan, the former head of Mossad, he had an important role in terms of expanding Mossad's operation inside Iran. Can you tell us about Meir Dagan and his operations?
Well, Meir Dagan was a general in the Israeli army. He was a good friend of Ariel Sharon, the prime minister at that time. He appointed him as the head of the Mossad after he left military service. His mission was to concentrate all the measures and all the decision processes from all the Israeli government offices regarding Iran. So he was like the Tsar of the struggle against Iran to stop Iran of having nuclear weapons. And Meir Dagan, who was the architect of building all these elements, diplomacy, economic sanctions, sending assassins to kill scientists in Iran, to sabotage warehouses or missile sites or nuclear sites, or technology which was on the way brought from abroad, either by sea or by air. So he was in charge of that, and the overall authorities were given to him. And he was very, very important key in building the case against Iran, not just for the Israeli intelligence community and the Israeli military, but also for the countries that cooperated with Israel, whether in the United States or EU, and so on, in terms of imposing sanctions on Iran. But before you impose sanctions, you need to have information whom to target with your sanctions. So that was the role of Meir Dagan. And Meir Dagan also
And he was the director of Mossad between 2002 to 2011 when he was negotiating, Iran was negotiating with the rest of the world about its nuclear program.
Yes, and but also there were sanctions on Iran, international sanctions, UN sanctions on Iran from 2006. Now, Meir Dagan, at a certain point, he became very, I don't want to be obsessed, but he became very interested in the mosaic of Iranian society and Iranian ethnicity. And he was maybe the first one on such a level. Of course, scholars knew that Iran is built on, minorities and different religions and so on, but he was very much the guy at the top whose attention was taken into that study of in the field, and he became very keen on looking at the possibilities that derive from this from this mosaic ethnical differences, and he started recruiting dissatisfied Iranians or Iranians that were not happy about the regime, or maybe had a family grudge or personal grudge against Iran, and he started recruiting them. There are Kurds and Azaris, better, Mazar. Kurds and
Azaris,
and Baluchis and
Turkmen, Arabs, and others, yes.
So he started to build that notion that we will use Israeli blue and white agents only as commanders, only as supervisors, but we would not risk them in the most daring operations. And then it expanded after Dagan left office. It expanded into the next directors of Mossad. Like,
before we move on to the next director, so these members of different ethnic and religious minorities, they were recruited as infrastructure agents or operational agents?
both. Most of them infrastructure agents. Because you needed to build the infrastructure. You need to acquire all the necessary logistics just in case if you want to execute something. I can give you an example. You know, the famous Beeper operation in Lebanon against Hezbollah in September 2024, last year. That started the idea and the planning of the operation and the acquiring of the equipment. It started in 2014. Of course, technologies over time change. The Hezbollah started using first radio walkie-talkies, and then they moved to the blippers. But it doesn't matter. The method was the same. So it started 10 years before it was executed. And I assume the same is with Iran. Some of these infrastructure agents started working on 10 years before. Now, one more point. Some of these operations, because for the Mossad, even to bring, a node, a battery into Iran, it's like they call it an operation. So some of the operations failed, and they needed to start building them from scratch. Some of them were exposed, some of them were not working. So, you had to always update your infrastructure operations and your infrastructure equipment and in your infrastructure logistics.
So based on what you're saying, Meir Dagan really started this massive recruitment of Iranians from inside Iran as agents of Mossad.
Yes.
Based on what you know or what you've heard, do you know which ethnic minorities were recruited more than others? Kurds, Baluch, Arabs, Azeris, which ones?
I don't think that they are very picky, the Mossad, about it. Anyone who can be useful for them after he has been tested, after he's been examined, after his background is checked, is suitable for them and is suitable for a particular mission would be selected. So it can be, Iranians, Farsi, Azaris, Baluchis, all of them, Arabs, Kurds, as long as, as long as they can serve Mossad purposes and they are ready to be part of it, because it's not by coercion. You cannot, the Mossad is not recruiting people, not just for Iranian operations, even for against the Lebanese or Hezbollah or Palestinians. Usually not by coercion, but because the recruiters and the case officers, they know that if you force someone, okay, you can have some levers against him, but eventually he would betray you because he hates you.
To volunteer to a certain extent.
Yeah, he would hate you and maybe would turn you over. So they want to build trust with the agent that they recruit.
And
of course, it's trust. It's not between equals.
Yeah, in your article you mentioned something important, that these agents, they get paid, but money is not the primary reason for them to work with. Money is always necessary to be able to sustain that help, but it's not the primary reason for them to volunteer their services.
The reason why people agree to work for the Mossad varies. It can be, some of it is financial rewards, but it's the hatred of the regime. It's the grudge against certain elements in the regime. it can be a desire to take revenge because a member of a family was tortured in a prison, or maybe he was tortured in a prison. Sometimes it's based on promises that are made. We will take care of your family. We will take of your medical necessities. Maybe education. I know about cases in which Iranians were sent abroad for education after a member of family worked for the Mossad. So, and he wanted to and that particular person wanted to bring a better future for his kids, or a better education for his kids in abroad. And Mossad is taking advantage of all these motives.
And in your article, you also mentioned that medical help is a great motive for many Iranians and non-Iranians, and Mossad has access to many medical facilities and doctors around the world, and that's how they recruit many agents, through those doctors and medical facilities.
Yes, in some cases they recruit agents because the agents or a member of the family need a medical treatment. But, it doesn't apply only to Iranians. Human beings would walk an extra mileage for medical treatment, for life-saving treatment. I mean, it's a human nature. And therefore, yes, the Mossad is very good at it. He has contacts around the world with clinics and with doctors. Not necessarily they know who is brought into the clinic, but the Mossad is bringing someone, and he knows someone, a doctor in a clinic or in a hospital, and asking them, please take care of this patient. They don't know who is the patient. Mm-hmm. Maybe they know his nationality, although I would doubt it very much.
Yeah. I want to ask two more questions about Meir Dagan, because he's a very fascinating character. In your article, you also mentioned that Holocaust played, or the memory of the Holocaust and his grandfather especially, played an important role in terms of motivating him. And on Iran Wire, we try to educate the Iranian public about the Holocaust and tell them the truth about the Holocaust. Could you tell us about what role did that play, the memory of the Holocaust, in terms of Meir Dagan's actions and decisions?
Meir Dagan was born in the Soviet Union to Polish immigrants, and his parents emigrated to Israel. Later on, he found in the Israeli Holocaust Memorial Museum, Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, he found a photo which he recognized as a picture of his grandfather kneeling in front of German Nazi soldiers, and they killed him. And once he found that photo, he took it with him wherever he went, to whatever office he served. And on his desk in the Mossad headquarters, there was this photo. And he was highly motivated by the notion that Israeli Jews, Israelis should defend themselves, and that it would not happen again. But at the same time, after he retired from the Mossad, he also said that when Israel started to change a little bit, as we see it nowadays, he said that he reached the conclusion that almost in every human being there are traits of brutality, or there are infrastructures or layers in which might grow brutality and sadism and so on. So yes, the Holocaust factor was a very important, especially when Iranian leaders have been threatening left and right, day after day, that they don't recognize Israel and they want to destroy Israel. I think it was Rafsanjani who said once, and Rafsanjani was considered a reformist, reformist president and politician. And he said it would take only one bomb to get rid of Israel. So that notion that Iran may reach the state in which they have a nuclear bomb, Israel doesn't want to take the chance and to wait and see whether they use it or
Which is true. I mean, Israel might be a one-bomb country, and that motivates them even more to stop Iran from developing even a bomb or half a bomb.
We call. I mean, in Israel, that perception, that notion is called the Begin doctrine, after Prime Minister Menachem Begin, who was the first prime minister to order to destroy a nuclear facility. At that time, 1981, of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, saying no single country or a coalition of countries in the Middle East would have nuclear weapons. We would not allow it. And indeed, in 2007, Israel bombed the Syrian nuclear reactor. And now that was a kind of a preemptive action to prevent Iran of building nuclear weapons. Now, Iran learned from the experience with Iraq and Syria, and they dispersed their nuclear facilities and not put it, like you say, like you used to say, the eggs in one basket, as Saddam Hussein did and as Assad did in Syria.
So another question about your article, and maybe it was a little bit before Meir Dagan's becoming director of Mossad. You mentioned that the Mossad gave the information about Iran's nuclear program, the information that was gathered in the 1990s, to a dissident group. In your article, of course, you do not mention the name of the dissident group, but everyone knows that it's the MEK, the Mujahideen Khalq. And this is the first time that I've read anywhere that this information has been mentioned, because I've asked many different journalists, different experts, and they say, yes, probably that happened, that Mossad passed the information to the MEK. But are you certain that it was the information that was given to the MEK by Mossad, and it was not the MEK agents in Iran that gave them the information?
Well, maybe they work for the Mossad, and they gave the information to the Mossad. But the Mossad, in order to launder the information, the Mossad didn't want to declare it. Nowadays, they have no troubles. I mean, they conduct almost every day through the social media psychological operations against Iran, in which they point out about targets or about personalities who are involved and wanted by Israel as a warning. But at that time, in 25 years ago, 20 years ago, the Mossad was still trying to keep the secret for itself. And if they wanted to reveal something, they use, through channels. And as far as I know, I think it was MEK who published the story once again through some other groups in the West. So that was about Natanz, by the way, about the nuclear enrichment facility in Natanz, which was at that stage only at very early construction phase.
Yeah, but that was the first time that the world heard about Iran's nuclear program at that time. And while we're at the subject of the MEK, as far as you know, again, how does the Mossad or different Israeli agencies work with Iranian opposition groups, armed opposition groups, in terms of carrying out the goals, the operations of Mossad?
Well, the Iranian authority accused the Baluchi.
They accuse everyone. They accuse even me of being an agent of Mossad, and I know that I'm not. So
no,
let's forget about the Iranian agent. Yeah.
No, but they hang someone. They hijack his plane, the leader of that group, and brought him to Tehran, and eventually hang him. Yeah. The Mossad would not recruit. The Mossad would not recruit entire groups as agent. They may recruit members of a particular group, because they, first of all, they are very keen and their security, field security, information security is very important. Their departmentalization, so you don't spread, the information that now this group or that group is working for the Mossad. You may use some members of that group, maybe with the knowledge of the leader. Maybe there would be some people in the group, in the organization, in the opposition dissident or group that are working as recruiters for the Mossad. That's possible. But there will always be buffers between the Mossad and these groups.
Okay, so the groups are not recruited, but individual members of groups can be recruited.
Yes. Once again, if they are suitable for the job,
yeah,
and passing all the tests, no problem recruiting them.
Yeah. And speaking of the agents inside Iran, in your article, you're careful not to mention the third countries or citizens of third countries. After the 12-day war, Iran expelled hundreds of thousands of Afghan migrants in Iran. As far as you know, were those citizens of third countries, they were mostly from Afghanistan or from Iraq or any other country?
I don't know. And it's good that I don't know. I shouldn't know. But, as I said time and again, the Mossad is ready to recruit anyone, be it Afghani or Pakistani or Azeri or maybe from Western Europe or Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Is up to the job. So look, I read also that the Iranians arrested 21,000 people, accused them of being involved one way or another in treason during the war. So I think maybe it was just a good opportunity to get rid of the Afghans.
It was a face-saving measure, basically. They had to do something because the way that they really lost that war was really disgraceful. So,
yes, and also maybe they wanted to get rid of the Afghani refugees in Iran.
Yeah, that was the plan before that as well. But the accusations were quite new that the Afghans were working for Mossad. So the reason that Israel attacked Iran on June 13th was that Iran was 2 weeks away from building a nuclear weapon. As far as you know, was that genuine and correct information that Iran was just 2 weeks away, or it was the right moment to carry out the operation that they had been preparing for such a long time?
Well, all the analysis by IEA, the Vienna-based, the atomic watchdog, by the Israeli intelligence, by the CIA intelligence, was that in the last year, Iran has been accelerating its nuclear program, and especially in the phase which is known as the weaponization. Now, Iran was very close within a week or 2 weeks from having 90% purity fissile material, enriched uranium. That was for sure. But this is only one component of building a nuclear bomb. The other one is the engineering, how to assemble the bomb, optics, chain of reaction, and so on. And then to equip it on a missile. Now, Iran has ballistic missiles. I witnessed it on my skin in the last war because I was staying in my house in a shelter, and windows were shattered and doors were broken because one of the missiles fell. 2 missiles fell not far from my house, which is by the Tel Aviv University. I think they targeted the university as a revenge, tit for tat, for bombing an Iranian embassy. So, it's more complicated to see that Iran was 2 weeks before having a bomb. They were 2 weeks before having enriched uranium. They were very fast working on the weaponization. With the missile, it would take them longer. And then there is, the big question, will they test the bomb or not. Now, the archive information, which was stolen by Mossad 2018, revealed one of the major revelations of the documents was that Iran was preparing 5 sites in Iran as nuclear test sites. There were no tests, they didn't test it, but they were preparing it for test. So, the Iranian rationale of moving forward was step by step, stone by stone, very slowly. But and they wanted to be a nuclear state, trash state. They were very close to it. Maybe they were already, and therefore Israel decided to bomb them. And as you mentioned, because the timing was perfect for Israel. Trump was a president. He gave an ultimatum to the Iranians: within 60 days, you have to reach an agreement. They didn't. And then he gave the green light for Israel. And even he was part of the deception, by setting this 60-day deadline. I think it was part of a deception.
So I guess at this point, I guess at this point, it's irrelevant whether it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever. They were
rushing to the bomb.
They were rushing, and it was the right moment for Israel to do that, as your sources have told you that. According to your sources, did they know that they would be so successful, or that success really surprised them?
Well, the Mossad and the military intelligence and the Israeli Air Force, all of them work together in a very collaborative effort, unlike maybe other Western intelligence services where the cooperation between the agencies is not always perfect. With this, in Israel, it's very, very good cooperation. There are some rivalries, of course, but basically they serve the same aim. They had a very precise plan, and they knew what they were after. But to a certain degree, I would say that they even surprised themselves with the success of the operation. Really success, because the surprise was from two angles. One, the military operation in the field in Iran itself. The second one, Israel prepared for thousands of injuries and death with the Iranian missiles. And in that sense, Israel was surprised that the interception of the missiles, the Israeli air defenses, were, with the help of the United States, was so good that the damage relatively, still there was a damage in Israel. As I said, my house was hit and many houses were hit, but only 30 Israelis were killed altogether. So the surprise was on both fronts. On the military field, that the operation was so precise, so accurate, so successful, and no one was killed, not a single airplane was shot down, and that the damage that Iran caused was tolerable. Let me put it this way. Still terrible to say.
As bad as it could be.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I'm thinking that, the reason that Mossad is able to recruit agents in Iran, be able to successfully operate in Iran, it all goes back to the actions and policies of the Islamic Republic in the past 46 years, because of the corruption, because of the economic problem, because of the political disenchantment, because of the discrimination against the minorities. Is Mossad and intelligence agencies in general, as far as you know, aware of such problems in Iran? Do they have the right academics and researchers to research and tell them the information? Or do you think that it's a little bit more haphazard than that?
No, they know about it, and they take advantage of it, of the weaknesses of Iranian society and the Iranian regime. Of course, I mean, we know you don't need intelligence gathering methods to know that there is a water problem in Iran. Yeah, dry out, there is shortage, there is corruption. That many people don't want to see this regime in place. Absolutely, they know about it, and this is, one of the Israel still is a very vivid democracy, despite the problems that we have with our government. So, democratic nations would always have an upper hand when it comes to intelligence, because the intelligence services of dictatorial regimes, they care only about preserving the regime, not about presenting the real picture. I can give you a very funny example of how I'm not trying to undermine the Iranian intelligence. They have some capabilities. They show some skillfulness. I have all the respect for them, but they don't understand the Israeli society. And even when they launch some sort of a propaganda operation, as they did 3 days ago, as we speak, they put a poster with Israeli leaders that are wanted. Prime Minister, tit for tat. Israeli Prime Minister, Defense Minister, Chief of Staff, some generals. They misspelled their names. I mean, and it's open source information. It's, and it's clumsy. It's,
I mean, this is so sad for them because if I were an Iranian leader, I would have died of shame, really, because how miserably I failed. And not only their mission of destroying Israel is ridiculous and unrealistic, but even if they wanted to destroy Israel, they would not be able to do that with this level of corruption and inefficiency and infighting and not being able to protect their own people. One other thing that I think Iranians misunderstand.
How can they destroy Israel if they cannot spell the names of Israeli generals?
You have to be able to spell first and then, destroy it. One other thing that I think the Iranians do not know about Israel, and as an Israeli, as someone who I know you're critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu, Iranians do not understand the level of patriotism in Iran. I've been in Israel. I've been to Israel 3 or 4 times, and I've met many Israelis. I know some Israelis in London, and I know how much they love their country, how much many people dedicate their lives to their country, including those Mossad agents. What can you tell people in Iran, especially in the government, especially someone named Ali Larijani, who used to be the Speaker of the Parliament, who says that Israelis are not patriotic at all? What can you tell them as an Israeli about patriotism in Israel?
Well, Israelis, even if they disagree with the government, and many Israelis do not agree nowadays with the Benjamin Netanyahu government, still they have a sense of there is a great sense of solidarity within Israel. And I can give you one example. There were before the terrible massacre by Hamas, supported by Iran, of October 7, 2023, when 1,200 Israelis, mostly civilians, were butchered by Hamas. Before that, there was a protest in Israel against the government, and many people went to the streets and demonstrated, including, some reservist pilots who said we would not fly if Netanyahu is aiming to change the nature of Israeli democracy. When the day of judgment came, when Hamas invaded Israel, all the pilots were called to office, and they appeared, and they flew their airplanes and protected Israel. So it gives you an example that Israelis are very patriotic, even if they disagree with the agreement, because with the government, they know what is at stake. And what is at stake is that still Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, before the change of before Ahmad al-Shara came to power recently, they don't want to see Israel amidst the Middle East. They don't think that Israel deserves the right to exist, and that's at the heart of the problem. Israelis want to make peace with their neighbors. Even Netanyahu, you know what I think about him.
Yeah.
But even Netanyahu is almost every week, twice a month, is broadcasting messages to the Iranian people. He's saying, we support you. We are not against Iran as a country. We are not against the Iranian people. We are just against the regime.
Yeah. So based on your conversations with these agents, what's the end game of Israel in Iran? Do they want regime change? Do they want to get rid of the nuclear program? What is the end game? Because although they were successful in terms of assassinating military commanders, these nuclear scientists, they did some really, really strange, bizarre, and some people would say stupid mistakes, such as bombing the prison and killing people who are against the regime in the prison. And they thought that it's a symbolic gesture. What's the end game?
Well, the purpose, the declared purpose of the war in the plans was to try to destroy as much as possible of the Iranian nuclear project and Iranian missiles. Before that, Iranian air defenses were destroyed, and that's what enabled the Israeli Air Force to bomb Iran and to stroll over the skies of Tehran like it was Tel Aviv. But when the war progressed, there were some voices in Israel that were saying, maybe we would target the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. I don't know if it would have been possible, but there were some thoughts about it. I think it would have been a mistake, but eventually it wasn't even considered, although some voices in Israel were talking about it. For example, the president Pazakian, he was wounded, but he was not a target. And I know from my sources, he just happened to be in a place that was bombed. He was not a target. So the end game of Israel. I mean, maybe Israel would fantasize to see a different regime in Iran, but I don't think it was a realistic aim, and it was not part of the war goals. Regime change, most people would tell you, including scholars and intelligence analysts in Israel, would come from within. It would not come from outside pressure, international pressure. It's not the story of 53 when the CIA and MI6 toppled the regime in the Shah regime in Iran.
So the end game is to weaken the Islamic Republic and contain Iran.
And maybe that would create a trigger reaction, would generate a trigger reaction, which eventually would lead to a regime change because the people would turn against the regime.
Yeah. And one thing that many Iranian propagandists are talking about is Israel aimed to cause secessions in Iran. Especially you talked about Meir Dagan and him using ethnic minorities in Iran. Some Iranians, most of them, I guess, Iranian Islamic Republic propagandists, but also some opposition members are talking about Israel aiming to cause divisions in Iran and separatism in Iran and secessions in Iran. As far as you know, as far as your sources told you, is that a plan?
No, there is no plan, but Israeli would not shed tears if there is, if there are divisions in Iran, or there is a breakup of Iran as a country, or maybe some regions would like to see independence. So, but I don't think Israel is encouraging them with intelligence and military force. I mean, it's once again part of if it happens, welcome.
Okay.
We would welcome. We would bless them, but that's not a target. And and sometimes we learn from our own experience that when there is a breakup of a country or a unit or organization, or if you kill someone who is a leader of a group, is his successors would be worse and chaos would emerge. So I'm not sure it's part of the
So it's
Israeli.
not part of the plan as far as you know.
No, there is no
Yeah.
grand strategy,
Mhm.
grand plan to turn Iran to fragmentalize Iran as a state.
Yeah. So the last question is about the current status of Mossad agents in Iran. As you mentioned, Iran arrested 21,000 people and released most of them. They have said that they are penetrating into different cells. As far as you know, and your sources have told you, how much of Mossad infrastructure is remained in Iran and is intact inside the country?
Well, I know that around maybe 200 agents that were operational in Iran for and participated in the combat were lifted safely outside of Iran to their houses, to their places, to their families, whatever. As far as the infrastructure agents, maybe some of them stayed. Most certainly they stayed. But I don't think that Iran that has a clue about them. And most of the Iranians that have been arrested is just face saving to show to the people and the regime we are now in a counterintelligence operation and we will expose our enemies. So, and talking to some of my sources, I asked them, what's next? And they said, well, first of all, they would get bonuses. Secondly, they will send into, they go for vacation. Thirdly, some of them would retire and would say, thank you, we are not continuing with the mission, which is fine. Some of them will be recruited against or will stay in place and be, activated again.
And what did your sources tell you about the possibility of another war, another conflict, military conflict between Iran and Israel in the next few weeks, month, year?
I'm very optimistic that there won't be another round. Iran doesn't want another round, at least for the time being, until they would rebuild and recover and lick their wounds. Not just air defenses, but also, to try to salvage their proxies, Hezbollah, Iraq, the Houthis. I'm not sure Israel would initiate another round. I don't see it happening as it is with Lebanon. In Lebanon, whenever the Hezbollah is trying to salvage some of its operations or some of its to get some new equipment, Israel is bombing them. The Israeli Air Force goes into action. I don't think it would be repeated in Iran, but maybe there will be some warning flights over Tehran skies, just to send a message to the leadership there. We watch you. We know what you are up to, and be aware of it. And above all, I think that eventually Iran and the United States will reach a deal. Will be some sort of an agreement because it's in the interest of both sides. Trump is talking about peace all the time. So we'll see how it comes out of the talks with Putin. What will be the results between Russia and Ukraine? He's pushing to have some sort of agreement between Israel and Gaza. He's portraying himself as a man of peace, and I think he's very much anxious to have a deal with Iran. And so the Iranians, but it are all up to the supreme leader, right?
Yeah, he's been very quiet in the last couple of months. Yeah. But let's hope for the best. I think it's a great time to end the interview and say, Inshallah. I'm going to stop. Thank you so much, Yossi, for this interview. I'm sure that many Iranians, including people within the Iranian government, find the information that you gave us very useful.
And let me say that I'm not an enemy of Iran.
You're a journalist doing your job,
Yeah, I'm doing my job, and
and a patriotic Israeli at the same time.
I met some Iranians abroad, not just you, and they are ordinary, nice people, like many people all over the world from different nationalities. It's just the politicians and the regimes that are turning people into what sometimes they are.
One thing that I think a lot of people don't know about you is the fact that you're a marathon runner and you've done more than 50 marathons.
No, don't exaggerate, only 35.
Only 35 marathons all around the world. Yes.
Maybe,
That's
well, I'm not that young, so I don't think that I'll be able to run a marathon in Tehran in my
Well, let's
lifetime.
hope for that. Yeah.
I hope to.